Hello and welcome to another Big Finish review. Today we're finally covering the 7th Doctor as we take a look at The Harvest by Dan Abnett. But before we get into the review, I'd just like to say, if you haven't already, please support the channel by hitting subscribe, turning on notifications, liking, commenting, and you can find and follow me on Twitter here. Now, The Harvest is technically a good jumping on point for the 7th Doctor's stories, as it's the introduction of audio exclusive companion Hex, aka Thomas Hector Schofield, played by Philip Oliver. However, there are some other stories that technically should be listened to first in order to set up the eventual arc that Hex is going to go on, but you technically don't need to listen to them straight away, as all of the stories with the 7th Doctor, Hex and Ace, prior to the introduction of the sidebar and the covers, they don't really dive into the arc. It's only round about 2007 that they start really getting into his character arc, so just bear that in mind. Speaking of his character arc and this story, The Harvest shares quite a lot of similarities to another companion introduction story, probably one of the most popular, Smith and Jones. While there aren't enough connections for me to call it a straight up rip-off, they do share quite a few similarities, which does make it seem much more than a coincidence. The story follows nurse Thomas Hector Schofield, better known as Hex to his friends, preparing for a normal day at work and to celebrate his birthday in the evening, only to suffer the loss of his friend who dies during an accident, despite seeming to be in really good hands and could potentially be saved. This then spirals into him taking part in a conspiracy at the hospital, where he joins a new staff member, the young McShane, and her colleague, the Doctor. In terms of serving as a introduction to a new companion, it does a really good job. Like I said, it's very similar to Smith and Jones, so we get to follow Hex as a character for pretty much the majority of the first episode, and we see everything from his perspective, his life, his relationships, his job. We really get a good opportunity to get to know him beyond the eventual stuff we're going to learn in future episodes. Here we get to see him as a person rather than a plot point. He establishes a strong connection with Ace the most in this story.
Thomas Hector Schofield.
Oh, just McShane.
Hector. Quite a millstone. I'm guessing that's where the Hex comes from.
Right. You found me out.
What can I tell you? Human resources. This your scooter? Very retro. Well, don't tell me you're about to go home.
Yeah, sorry.
And I've only just arrived. A girl could get a complex, you know.
Look, it's nothing personal.
Says he. What's up? Your friend. He didn't make it, did he?
How did you know?
That look in your eyes. I know what it means. I've seen it many times before.
Initially, the Doctor takes quite a background role. In fact, you might even miss his brief appearance in part 1, but from part 2 onwards he gets much more active in the story. He doesn't get to spend too much time with Hex, as it's more about focusing on his relationship with Ace, but the time they do spend together is pretty funny.
What is this? How
requires a 2-hour lecture with flip charts and slides. And I'm afraid I don't have the time just now.
McShane?
Oh, you'll find she takes an awful lot longer to understand, even with diagrams.
McShane!
Try to stay calm, Hex. You'll find the initial open-mouthed shock fades after an hour or so.
It will.
Oh yeah, it's replaced by an uncomfortable nagging sense of the uncanny, which never quite goes away. But that's a lot easier to cope with in the long run than the slack-mouthed gibbering.
As for the actual story, The Harvest does something incredibly interesting, which I am going to have to spoil, and so if you don't want to know the major twist of this story, I'd skip to this time code, as it's a secret that they actually did a pretty good job hiding in the promotional material, so just bear that in mind. So the twist is that the conspiracy dealing in the hospital is the fact that the military are working with one of the doctors there as part of a program to restore the humanity of a group of Cybermen. Yep, that's right, this is a Cyberman story, and they do a good job at keeping that twist hidden to the point that Nick Briggs isn't even voicing them. In my opinion, this is one of the most interesting Cybermen stories that we've ever gotten, and it's a fascinating concept that I'm sad that it's never been explored elsewhere. The idea of Cybermen being given the opportunity to have their emotions and humanity back. As we sometimes tend to forget, the main reason the Cybermen converted themselves was a means to survive hostile environments and prevent death. The removal of emotions was a side effect of the incredibly painful process. So actually being given the opportunity to survive but have that emotion and feelings back is really interesting, and it's curious to see what the Cybermen do now that they have their emotions back and how they operate.
We have wearied of our cold existence.
Oh, really? My heart's bleed.
This world is not Mondas. It is not so frozen and lifeless that only the cyber-implanted can survive here. It is warm. It is vital. It offers us a chance to enjoy lives of sensation and feeling.
But your so-called cold existence was self-imposed.
By the race, not by us.
What are you saying? You and your 6 comrades, you want your organic identities back?
That is all we have asked for in return for our technology.
Overall, I really recommend this one, especially to fans of the new series. It's very much in keeping with the traditional companion introductory story that we typically get in the modern version of the show. And there's a lot more time for depth and character growth for our new companion, as well as the previously established Doctor and companion dynamic already set up. This is interesting to see a new companion being brought into the already established really great 7th Doctor and Ace relationship, and will actively change and improve them for the better as time goes on.